Thanks very much. Thanks very much. The Brighton Dome, has got a lot of history. A lot of history, founded as a retreat for royalty to get away from the smoke of London. And then it achieved even greater fame when ABBA won the Eurovision Song Contest here. And indeed, Labour Party conferences were held here as well. But you know what? The Labour Party is now so big, it couldn't even fit a conference in here. Because we now have over 500,000 members, 300,000 new members in 1 year. Isn't that something to be proud of? And that hasn't happened by accident. It's happened because things have changed. And things are going to keep on changing because we want change. We want change for social justice. We want change for real opportunities for everybody within our society. A year ago, the Labour Party lost a general election. It lost a general election fundamentally, I believe, because we were offering austerity light. We were offering to continue the public sector wage freeze. And quite disgracefully, just over a year ago, we were abstaining on a welfare reform bill that was taking £12 billion out of the income levels of the very poorest and most dependent within our society. Wrong, wrong, wrong. We've got to do things differently. And so, the leadership election a year ago was about change. And with the incredible mandate we received, it's not about individuals, it's about all of us and how we want to do politics in our society. We changed. John McDonnell became the Shadow Chancellor of the Exchequer and said, and I have to say, John has done a fantastic job, and what a fantastic friend and comrade he is. Said, austerity is a political choice, not an economic necessity, and said that we should measure a government and its economic policies by the number of poor people who are brought out of poverty, the number of homeless people that get somewhere to live, the number of children no longer living in damp, infested, overcrowded, expensive private flats. Measure it by social change and social advance. An economy that works for all and doesn't leave people behind. So John put those ideas clearly out there. And you know what? A year later, people say, well, of course austerity is wrong. Of course it hasn't worked. Of course it's a mistake. It's a shame they weren't saying that in 2008 when the banking crisis came. And what were they doing? Those right-wing economists, what were they doing? Saying, well, of course it's brought about by excessive levels of public spending. Too many Sure Start centres, too many care workers, too many street cleaners, too many firefighters, too many social workers, too many nurses, all too expensive. Wrong, 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 wrong. What we need is a society that does respect and include all, but also a society that invests in the future, invests in good quality, sustainable manufacturing jobs, invests in good quality railways. My goodness, in Brighton of all places, you should know this very, very well. As you may have heard in some of the papers, I spend a fair amount of time on trains. And I enjoy it. And I have to say that the nicest people in the world are those who work on the trains. Those people that check the tickets, that check the train safe, that sell the tea and all that. They're the nicest people in the world. And then you look at the investment all of us, have put in to electrification, put into new stations, put into infrastructure, put into everything. And we've bought the trains and all the rest of it. And then for some bizarre reason, we hand the whole thing over to a train operating company to run it, and it is publicly owned. Unfortunately, it's not this public, it's somebody else's public that own it. And then when you get Southern Rail doing so absolutely brilliantly that even a Tory government has to put special payments into it to help them to run it better, and a crack management team to turn it round, I ask myself the question, what kind of franchise is it that Southern Rail have got that you can cancel trains, lay off staff, leave passengers stranded on stations, make people endlessly late for work because you're not running the thing properly and you're not investing properly in it, and carry on making money out of the franchise? So in the very week Govia are posting a big profit, the government's giving them a bit more to help them run the service. Wouldn't it be a really good idea if we ran the service as a public company and public ownership? And I'm very keen that we should do that. And so this election, at one level, yes, it's an election for the leadership of the Labour Party. Maybe it wasn't an election campaign we sought. We were happy to take part in the election campaign last year. We won that position last year. We have defeated the Tories on a number of very important issues over the years. This year we defeated them on working tax credits. 3 million families have not lost £1,000 this year because we did that. The disgraceful attempt to cancel personal independence payments for so many people with disabilities, we defeated them on that. And when they tried to force every school in the whole country to become an academy accountable to itself, not to the public, we defeated them on that. And now the latest brilliant idea of this incredibly imaginative government is to go back to the future and bring back the 11 plus exam. Well, I simply say this. Children grow up together in a primary school. They learn to get along or not get along. They have their ups, have their downs. But above all, they grow up together and they kind of understand stuff about each other. This kid's good at music. This kid's good at art. This kid's good at French. This kid's good at maths. This kid's a good runner, and so on and so on. All the kind of things that children do. And then they should go on to a secondary school together in the same community. Again, growing up together. So the big message they get then is that all kids can do something. All kids can do something together. All kids can begin to understand each other and understand an awful lot about each other and our society. So what's the Tories' idea? Absolutely brilliant, isn't it? Let's give them all a test at the age of 11, and we'll put some of them into a grammar school and the rest will go to something else. And say to everybody, don't worry, these grammar schools are going to be really fair and they're going to include everybody. Well, if they can include everybody, why have the test? Something tells me that the maths isn't very good there. And so what do? You've got 100 kids here, and you say to them, take the 11 plus. Depending on the part of the country you're in, you're going to get 20, maybe 30, maybe 40 will pass the 11 plus. They will get to go to the grammar school. They will be told there's something special because they're going to a grammar school. Then the other 70, 60, 50, whatever it is, over here, won't go to a grammar school. They'll go to something else. They used to be called secondary modern schools. They probably wouldn't bring that name back because it's not very popular. And what are we saying to those kids, the majority who are not going to pass the 11 plus, that somehow or other they're second class, they're second rate, they've got to be forgotten by our society? So we absolutely challenge them on this idea. Every child is special. Every child has talents. Every child has abilities. Every child has to have something brought out of them. So I want to see properly funded community schools with a family of schools through local education authorities. And I want to go a bit further. No more the cuts in the school budgets. No more the underpayment of very important jobs like teaching assistants and what they do to help teachers and help the children through. But also bring up our kids to understand that they all have talent. And I am very determined that we appreciate the cultural values. We all have imagination, art, culture, ideas. How about an aim? Every child learning a musical instrument in school. How about that as something to aim for? Now, this isn't all pie in the sky stuff. It's about the way we treat people, about the investment we make as a community in the education of our children. We've put forward ideas on this, as we put forward ideas on lots of things. Last year's campaign and this campaign. And the last time I looked, we had about 12,000 really interesting submissions already come in only a few days on many of the policy ideas we put forward. Because I want to see us, as a movement, as a party, as a community, using the skills, talents, ideas, imagination and knowledge of everybody. Those that have got good ideas of things you can make, good ideas of the way you can develop things, good ideas about sustainable energy, good ideas about energy co-ops, and then come on to the issues of health, of housing. I've mentioned something of education. Let's deal with health first. Our National Health Service is something very, very precious. Health service free at the point of use. Absolutely crucial to all of us. That health service is a human right. It was fought for, campaigned for, and brought in. And it's under threat. It's under threat from the Health and Social Care Act. It's under threat from the underfunding of our hospitals. It's under threat from the debt levels of our hospital. It's under threat from the private finance initiative and the money it leaches out of the health service. And it's under threat by the atomization of the service into a series of competing private contracts, not a health service where you have the community of doctors, of administrators, of technicians and all the other groups coming together in order to help people. Because when you go into hospital, you have an operation, it's actually a most wonderful team effort. It's a team effort like an orchestra coming together to perform an operation. And they do it every day. So let's admire and value our health service. And Aneurin Bevan, when asked if it will last, he said it'll last as long as there are folk around to defend it. Are we going to defend it? Thank you. And the other issue is the one that people often choose not to talk about, and that is the question of mental health within our society. A quarter of us will go through a crisis in our lives. It'll be of differing types. Some of us will get through it because we'll have good care, good support, good friends, good neighbours. Those who love us will help to look after us. Some won't. Some will be very isolated, and some will be in a very difficult place. And there are too many young people, sadly, particularly young men, who end up unable to talk about it, unable to get the help they need, unable to get the support they need, and the stigma attached to mental health drives them into a terrible place. Let's change our own attitudes, but above all, fund our health service and our mental health services so there is real parity of esteem, and people with a mental health condition are treated just as much as anyone with a physical health condition. One of the greatest problems facing most people in this country is housing, and Brighton is affected by the housing crisis basically in the similar way that London is affected. We are a wealthy country, and it breaks my heart, the very idea that there are people sleeping on the street every night, and more people are sleeping on the street every night. They're people that have, all kinds of things have happened to them in their lives, and they've become deemed to be intentionally homeless, and so on. Those of you familiar with housing legislation will know what I'm saying when I say that. But we also have a generation, several generations perhaps, of children growing up in overcrowded, very expensive private rented accommodation, On seaside towns, they're sometimes reasonably housed during the winter, terribly housed during the summer, because the holiday flats go for visitors rather than those people that are homeless. And so you have this floating population all over the country on 6-month tenancies, assured short-hold tenancies, where they're in difficulties. Often very expensive and insecure, and sometimes the families have to move, children have to move schools several times, creating an insecurity for those children and also a huge cost for the rest of us. Do you know what the annual bill is for housing benefit paid solely to the private rented sector? £9.5 billion. We're paying £9.5 billion to pay for the rent of people who need that help and support, and they're entitled to it, and I'm not complaining about their entitlement, but it's going to expensive private landlords. Now, if all of those were in council tenancies, some would still receive housing benefit, of course, but it would be nothing like £9.5 billion. So if we invested in building, say, over 5 years, 500,000 council homes, you'd create good, secure houses with lifetime tenancies. You would have rents that are genuinely affordable, and you would have good jobs in the building industry, and you'd have good jobs all the way through the supply chain. A virtuous circle by the provision of good quality housing rather than the expenditure of a vast amount of money to provide people with inadequate, insecure accommodation. Can't we do things differently? We need to do things very, very differently within our society. And so what this leadership campaign is about, at one level, of course, is about the election of the leader of the party. But it's also about the way we do politics within our society. This is the 36th leadership election campaign rally we've done in the past 6 weeks, all over the country. The attendance is enormous at many of them, absolutely enormous. And most of them have been held outdoors, partly because we can't afford to hold them indoors. But that's great, because it means that nobody's under any obligation. They've just turned up because they're interested and want to hear something, maybe hear something different, perhaps have some ideas they've never heard before. And it's brought a lot of people together. Brought young people into politics, brought older people into politics, brought people back into politics who were disillusioned by the Iraq war, disillusioned by austerity, disillusioned by privatization, disillusioned by the anti-libertarian legislation that's been passed within our society. Bring people together, campaigning together, demanding justice and things together, you change everything within our society. The alternative is the blame culture, the hate crime, the racism, the abuse of saying, well, there's a queue at the doctor's surgery. It's obviously the fault of that Lithuanian family that are living down the road. There is a shortage of school places. It's obviously the fault of somebody who happens to speak with a different accent or come from a different part of the world. And at the end of that, what do? Create an atmosphere of nastiness, of blameworthiness, of blame culture. And at the end of it, you've built not one house, you've trained not one nurse, you've trained not one teacher. You've improved absolutely nothing. All you've done is created a horrible atmosphere in society. But when we come together, we do things very differently. Think of those that campaigned for the right to vote against all the odds in the 19th century. Those that campaigned for the right of women to vote. Those that stood up against racism. Those that stood up against homophobia. Those that stand up today against racism, anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, or any kind of racism within our society. You're not just standing up for something that's right. The end product of it is you've brought people together in a common endeavour of the kind of society and kind of world in which we want to live. A world based on democracy, peace, justice, and human rights. And so, can I say thank you, and please put your hands together and join me in this, to all of the volunteers that have organised not just tonight's events, but all the other events all over the country. And that when this leadership election is over, next week, when the votes end and the result is declared a few days later, I want us to be out there campaigning for health, for housing, for jobs, for justice, campaigning for the kind of society where there is real opportunity for everybody, not the grotesquely unequal society in which we live, where there's tax havens, tax avoidance and tax abuse at the top of the scale, and there's poverty, inequality, injustice and lack of opportunity for the children of the poorest at the other end. Bring people together in order to bring a society together, to create real social justice, real hope, real opportunities, and the values that go with it. Thank you very much indeed.